Greetings everyone, here we are with the third video of maybe more. This is specifically the Pathfinder Second Edition Abomination Vaults Adventure Path video. This is just for this one. I already did the comparison video, the first one. That was released at 4 o'clock like Geneva time. And the Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition version for 5 o'clock. So this is the 6 o'clock video. Alrighty, first and foremost, as we can see, this is MSRPs for $54.99. It has old Pathfinder Second Edition Legacy label in the corner here. This is specifically produced under the OGL. So it's specifically primarily built compatible with Pathfinder Second Edition Legacy, or the original Pathfinder Second Edition. It has a dark internal green cover, somewhat in line with the Pathfinder Second Edition remaster color scheme, but it is for Abomination Vaults as well. As we can see here, there's a total of 10 major chapters for the adventure itself, plus 2 preamble chapters, campaign overview, and Otari. The campaign overview basically just gives you the Game Master framework tips for the adventure. And the Otari chapter, which is chapter 0, basically gives you the overview of Otari. Chapter 1 to 10 ranges from pages 20 to 205. Nimbala, which is the very last one, covers the very final conclusionary details of the adventure. And adventure toolbox is from 212 all the way down to 253. It is noted here that states that from the beginner box, the original Pathfinder Second Edition beginner box, that this was, if you are to run this after with the same group, your group should be level 2 starting into this. That will not severely affect the way this adventure unfolds, as each level of the dungeon or each chapter is roughly in line with the level up scheme of your characters. There's plus or minus a few points. So by the time you achieve level chapter 2, going down a level in the dungeon, you should be level 2 as characters. So this will only result in your characters being slightly ahead in experience for the adventure if you have run them through the adventure in the beginner box. However, there is a sequel adventure for the beginner box, Menace in Otari, if I remember correctly off the top of my head. That actually runs, I think, from level 2 to 3 or 4. And that would result in mathematically your party being a little bit overpowered for this adventure if you also ran that one as well. Also, keep that in mind. However, this is not an absolutely linear adventure. This adventure has some wiggle room. There's rooms where your party doesn't have to necessarily go into to collect everything or fight all the enemies. So depending on how your party plays, the type of people that try to find a way down as fast as possible, running them through the 2 previous adventures, Trouble in Otari and Menace in Otari, would actually help them out through this, because they would still kind of need that little extra buffer at the beginning with experience points. There is, of note, content warning here. This is for the players as well as everyone else. This adventure contains undead, demons, devils, various other aberrations, body horror, and ghosts. Ghosts. So if you have any issues with that stuff, then you probably might want to either sit out on this adventure, or or fight through it, depending on how you want to go about it. This is the side view of the adventure. Level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, and so forth as it goes down. The rough level scheme for your party should be in line with the levels in which you're getting to. Please note that there are side paths that come off of this. There's one down here that goes right off the bottom. That is a very nice feature that they sometimes include in these kind of things, where the game master is capable of addenduming in little side areas that are whole other parts of the world. I always like stuff like that. The campaign overview section largely tells you the history of why Gauntlet exists, as well as this structure here, and the antagonist or the villain of the story origin. It covers the timeline right over here. Right over here is the adventuring or advancement track advice. It suggests that your character should be at certain levels before they descend a level in the dungeon. And it should give you a milestone adjustment. So if you're going by experience points, it works out perfectly fine. However, this milestone adjustment explaining exactly how much enemies your characters have to defeat, or who they should interact with, or what they should interact with, or etc., 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 is denoted here or in this track, going all the way down from the first level down to the 10th level of the dungeon. The Otari section of the book covers obviously the town of Otari, but also some outlying locations around the edge of Otari, and shows you the clear path that goes to Gauntlet. It talks you through the events of Otari, important locations, important characters, and so forth. Some of these characters your party will be familiar with from the beginner box adventures in Otari, as well as Menace on Otari. You could still run those ahead of time. You just have to adjust on here. So this is the magical point in which players should probably step out of the video and the game master should stay. First and foremost, the dungeon is a classic castle-esque structure with the beacon sitting up on top of this turret right here. As your party arrives, they'll come near A1, but there's also some interesting details about A3 and A2. Largely, the numbering scheme seems to be the natural organic flow of this dungeon. However, there may be exceptions. Please note that there are some secret doors here and there that lead into secret little nooks and crannies where extra items are. There is a handy-dandy treasure tracker for each level. So on the preceding page, under the Chapter 1 synopsis, which gives you the basic gist of the whole thing, and the environmental cues, there will be a chapter treasure list that will denote all the important treasure, like armor, weapons, poisons, charms, etc., that your characters can come across. As I denoted in the Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition version of this, the upper levels are largely little gremlin creatures, bugs, spiders, other things such as that. So some people who might be a little squeamish about giant bugs and stuff like that, that's going to touch them off. The Pathfinder Second Edition version of this book has less artwork than the Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition version of this book. I show that off exactly in the video, but not show everything. So go to that video if you want to see the differences, or to the Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition one after watching this one if you happen to own this one. You go down a level and you enter into a whole nother section, the Forgotten Dungeon. There's interesting little outside, little underwater edge places you can enter into and exit out of in this dungeon. This is the point where the dungeon starts to get a little more complicated. There's more traps, more monsters. Things get a little hairier as you go into this. Enemies get a little tougher, and so forth. You start seeing more undead-like creatures as you come down this way, as well as a few others. Keep in mind that this adventure probably favors clerics and champions, and anyone else who has a natural connection to divine magic. So if the party is not having a whole lot of divine casters, you might want to nudge them in that direction. You got some ghouls and various other creatures as you go in. You have the Ghoul Queen. And then we arrive at Chapter 3, the Long Dream of the Dead. So you have even more undead kind of situation here. It is always fascinating to find non-monsters in the area. You also have important background information revealed to you in this chapter about the origin of the villain, as well as the origin of Otari and the area around it. Chapter 5 is the training grounds, which is the area in which there's an arena here for the enemies used to train and various other monsters. So you actually run into more interesting situations. Yet again, you have people and other things down here. That's always interesting, how you somehow manage to get humans and elves and other stuff still alive in this place after 500 years. There's of... or a couple, 500 years of people being locked away in a dungeon. So this is one of those dungeons where if your players are the kind of players who ask really deep questions about the ecology of a dungeon, you're going to run into the issues with that. You got some bone gladiators and viscous black puddings in here. You got Experiments in the Flesh, Chapter 6, which is the bottom end of that whole structure. Still, yet again, more arena-esque stuff, more creepy crawly, the enemies. Driders, Pathfinder Driders are terrifying in appearance, which might creep some people out if they are a bit squeamish about spiders. And got rat people and so forth. And that's the general gist of this. As you go deeper, it gets creepier and creepier. Please note, as you continue down, you'll run into more demons and more devils. Not demons specifically, but devils. So you got some demons, you'll get some more abominations as we go down, and so forth. So this is a handy dandy thing. Decaying Gardens. Yet again, more people that somehow managed to survive down here. Some interactions with a drow as well as a Medusa on the hunt. The dungeon gets bigger and bigger as you continue downward until you get to like the last two levels, which last level, in which then it shrinks down again because that's the final stage. You get information on various important items you have to watch out for and enemies. basically the final set of bosses just before the final boss fight area, this is the final level of the dungeon. Draw the Baleful Glare. And so forth. And then you have the final boss fight right here. You got Nehebola, which is the dark god that is the crux of this adventure. And then the various information on characters relating to him, and focus spells and other important details. You got the Adventurer's Toolbox, which contains unique items specifically to the Pathfinder Second Edition version of this adventure, as well as the standard items that you would get even in the D&D 5th Edition version. And then as we continue along, we also have the MacGuffins, important spells specifically related to Pathfinder Second Edition version, as well as magical instruments and curses. And we have the archetypes. Now, the reason why the Pathfinder Second Edition version book is smaller than the Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition book is because they use keywords for a lot of mechanics. And then we're on to the Bestiary. The Bestiary actually has a pretty good collection of different creatures, some abominations of incredible hideousness. And then you also have various devils, Morlocks, insect-like creatures, various worm-like creatures, which are basically also abominations as well, undead, and much, much more, as well as the open game license, because this is actually originally for the OGL version of Pathfinder 2nd Edition, glossary and index, and advertisements for the earlier stuff in the early Pathfinder 2nd Edition. I'm not going to really attach a score to this. I'm just saying that overall this looks to be a fairly well-created adventure. I am planning on actually either running people through this version or this version. I might actually run people through both versions. I have a D&D group, a Monday group that I might actually slip into Abomination Vaults after one of the other game masters is done and running his campaign. That might be the thing I might be doing with that one. And then my main group, I might at some point get around to getting them on and to trying Pathfinder 2nd Edition. I still have to do a last bit of connecting work between Menace of Otari and Menace in Otari and Abomination Vaults, just finishing up my paperwork for the encounters. One of my weaknesses as a game master is I'm terrible at math. One of the golden rules of game mastery is you prepare the things you can't do on the fly, and you ad-lib or invent the stuff you are good at, good on the fly. I am actually exceedingly good at inventing situations on the fly, coming up with characters, coming up with an interesting character for the party to talk to, or a situation in the environment. But I am not really good at doing all the math for initiatives and attacks really quickly. So I kind of pre-can a bunch of those ahead of time so I can just follow through, or I make a sheet where it has all the math for all the different attack options. So if something rolls a 18, totaling all the bonuses together, this is the result kind of situation. Or here's an initiative. I roll all the initiatives for all the enemies in a room. All I have to do is just wait for the party members to say, I got a 16. Grell got a 16. Put down Grell, 16. Joba, 19. Lona, 12. Stuff like that. And then I already have all my monsters initiatives worked out for that. So at some point, I'm going to actually do a review for these. I probably should do a review for the starter sets for Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, because I actually have ran people through those, as well as some of the small one-shotted short adventures and other stuff for D&D 5th edition and Call of Cthulhu. But I have so much stuff on my table as it is. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you have a delightful day, a nice night, and a wonderful week and a magnificent month. And see you next time. Ciao.